Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us as we welcome our speaker, Luciano Giubbilei. Luciano is a UK-based landscape and garden designer, known for his award-winning gardens at the Royal Horticultural Chelsea Flower Show and for his beautiful and serene garden designs for private houses across the world. He grew up in the walled city of Siena, with absolutely no gardens nearby, but came to gardening through his love of food and cooking for big social gatherings, very Italian. At the age of 19, he rented a plot on the outskirts of town and learnt everything he could from a local contadino, small farmer, about growing edibles. He then spent a year as an intern at Villa Gambaraia in Florence, cutting his ornamental gardening teeth in one of the pinnacles, perhaps, of Italian Renaissance garden design. Moving to England in 1992 with his English partner, he trained at the Inchbald School of Garden Design under British luminaries such as Andrew Wilson, John Brooks, Peter Thurman, and then he established his own practice in 1997, producing designs for what he describes as green gardens, monochromatic, linear, structural, architectural, underpinned perhaps by that formative Italian experience. However, in 2012, he was invited to begin working on an experimental flower bed in the famous UK garden of Great Dixter, in close collaboration with the head gardener there, Fergus Garrett. His 7 years spent on and off in that garden created a shift and a new desire to garden with flowers, which is documented in his most recent book, The Art of Making Gardens. He has been gardening at the field at Son Servera in northeast Mallorca since April 2020. This is his own land and features a cultivated area surrounded by a wider and wilder environment of self-seeders. Artur Serracosta, who's here with us this evening, became the gardener on the property in the same year. And a dialogue between the designer and the gardener and the landscape began as more than 100 varieties were planted, seeded, recovered, pulled out, reseeded, recovered. 4 years later, we will hear from Luciano about this gardening journey. Thank you so much, Luciano, for agreeing to speak to us. We're very honored to have you with us. If you would like to share your screen now. Okay, you need to possibly unmute yourself. Luciano?
Yes, good evening.
Ah, bene, bravo. Okay.
Good evening. I thank you so much, Angela. I'm starting very few slides, a little bit of my background. I'm from Siena. I grew up within the wall of the city, and as a child and growing up in Siena, I have no memories of gardens. We played. Just a second, it's not moving. Let me see how I do it. Sophie? That one? Oh, okay, sorry. There's an error at the bottom. As a child, I play in this garden. This is Giardini di Sant'Agostino, a gravel area with chestnut trees and lime trees. And yeah, and this is pretty much the way I grew up there in Siena. I soon after I finished the army, I met an English girl, and I moved outside the wall of the city into a more rural area, and I started to grow vegetables. And for the love of food and spending time with friends and family, I went into a search to learn about gardens and gardening. I wanted to become a gardener. That was my very first idea. So I went to the historical villas around Tuscany to ask for a job without no experience. One morning I arrived at this villa. This is Villa Gamberaia, and I met the then gardener Silvano, which asked me about what I wanted to do, and I said, well, I would like just to learn garden and gardening, and it took me on the basis that I won't be paid, and I was very happy with that, and I did over a year there, and then it gave me. At the moment that I decided to leave Gamberaia and travel to England to study garden design, it gave me a book which included this picture and these pictures, which is a book of Baltazar Korab, is an Hungarian photographer, which was spending time at Villa Gamberaia during the year of the Great Flood of Florence in 1966, and recorded the garden in black and white during a very dramatic time for the city. And you can feel the mood within the picture, and also the mood of Balthazar that just lost his father, and spending time in such a place at such a time. And I think this is sort of this picture that became catalyst for me in a way that I went to make gardens afterwards. And I look at the composition of the pictures and the quality of the photographs, and how everything sort of looked also very, very modern as a composition, and to a certain extent I wanted to understand how people were making places so beautiful, and so with that in hand, I went to London and studied. As soon as I had my first opportunity, which was immediately was 2 years after college, I was able to start this making many gardens with this idea, and the idea was the idea of green layering with spacing, rhythm, proportion, and flowers were present, but they weren't visible. You really always had to find them. And my horticultural background was very, very basic, is what I learned from my experience being in England only for a very short time. But I started to travel. I traveled through Belgium, Holland, Germany. I met nurserymen. I saw how people in other countries were making gardens, and I was also inspired by the people that grew the trees. Soon after that, 10 years after that, I was brought by a client to Morocco. Morocco was my very first experience of a different climatic condition than England. And at that point, I was faced to use a different plant palette, but creating the same simplicity, if you like, with the green spaces, but with movement. And this was my very first moment that I was, that I experienced something totally new. And Morocco has a great tradition of roses. And so, there was this garden in Morocco, and soon after, that was 2007, 2011, I went to meet Fergus Garrett, and with Fergus, I spoke about that I'm looking for a change, and I would like to garden with you. And he said, well, you won't be possible to garden with me, but I'm going to give you a piece of land here where you can garden, and we can meet and talk about your idea. You can be here in the garden, and the contact with Fergus wasn't really just about plants, but was really about being in a community of gardeners where everybody talked about plants. They met in the morning and they had plant list. They met at lunchtime and they talked about plants. They met in the evening at dinner and there was more talk about plants. So plants was the subjects of the people that were around, and it was a great, was a beautiful experience. So that was the small plot that I had there. And so we created many different modes. I worked there with James Horner, which is now the head gardener at Benton End. Cedric Morris, a place that they're going to, they're working on it, and that is this project. This is a spring moment that we made, sort of a little bit later in the summer, into autumn. And so this triple land sort of created a lot of, a lot of experience about plants and interchanging different parts every year and introducing new plants. Soon after, I made gardens in Formentera with sort of more dry loving plants, and Tuscany. And this is a garden which we're still working on. And in fact, we're going back next week. So I've been going to Mallorca for a very long time. My best friend there, my goddaughter, is there, and used to go and spend time on the island like a lot of people do. Through my best friend, I met an artist called Guillem Nadal, which lived on the outskirts of Son Servera. I used to go where I really needed time away from my practice and from London. This is a view from Guillem's house, and the cluster of buildings, which is just vaguely visible on the distance, is the village of Son Servera. And Son Servera is really the place where my house is, and is very close to the field. So I started to visit Guillem in 1998, and Guillem is the one that sort of made the connection for me to meet the lady at the house, which was a very well-known ceramist for that area, which is called Maria Antonia Carrió. This is Guillem in the studio, and this is the place that I spent time when I was there, which happens to be very close to the field. That is the landscape of Guillem Nadal, and I found his landscape, apart from the fact that it's extremely sculptural, but he cared for trees. So these trees were planted from really young trees, and he developed them as these beautiful sort of dancing figures. In the summer I had Euphorbia dendroides, sort of skeletal plants. It was all this kind of landscape, and I loved the idea. I'm not sure how I was going to do a commission for a client, but I love being in this landscape and seeing him working with the trees. Soon after, also another connection with Son Servera that I had in the past is a place which is very close, which is Son Gener, and done by a local architect called Tony Esteva. I believe in faith. I think everything has a story that brings us to a place, and I find myself really in this belief when I think about that. This house where I spend a lot of time in the field are so close to all of these places that are so familiar to me, and I visited many years ago. And I love being with Guillem. I love being in Tony Esteva's space. I find this serene. This is an hotel. At that time was a 7-bedroom hotel. Now it's a different thing, but more than 20 years have passed by. And this is Maria Antonia Carrió. So this is Maria Antonia Carrió sitting outside her studio, which is on the first floor. Yeah, I met her in 2016. And was another moment, there are different moments, I think, for people, that something takes you to a place and a new life starts. And this was really, without me knowing in that moment, I was really starting a new life. I met Maria Antonia, we connected, we spent 24 hours together. She made beautiful ceramic. These are her studios. And she always talked about beauty and how difficult it is to make beautiful things. And I could relate to that. I could find that sense of looking for beauty and make beautiful things. Something I could relate to how difficult it is. Soon after that meeting, in 2016, that was was the end of July 2016. Maria Antonia passed away, and the wife of the artist Guillem contacted me to say that that Maria Antonia wanted me to have the house, and I didn't know what they meant by it, if they wanted to give it to me or they wanted me to buy it, but they wanted me to buy it. And at that point, my question was, I'm not sure I can afford it. So the whole things that the wife told me, she said that you're going to afford it. So we're going to make sure that you're going to afford this house. And I thought about it for very short time, not even 24 hours. And of course I said yes, because I remember the place was beautiful and it was filled with beautiful ceramic and molds, and it has studios. So one of the things, these are the remaining pieces from Maria Antonia Carrió, that's still at the house. She still has the studio that when she was there. There are two studios. One is in the garden, one is on the first floor, where she had the picture with the dog taken. And one of the things wasn't just to take the house and just make a house to go there and spend good time, but was really maintaining a purpose for the place. This was a ceramist place, and the whole idea was, I would like to continue the purpose and have some kind of activities or some kind of references about ceramic within within this place. And so this is the upper studio being restored with the first exhibition that we had, which was Maria Christofsen, Swedish ceramist. This is Alana Wilson from Sydney. She came to the house, and also we sort of put together a show for her. And it's not a commercial. We are not an art gallery, and this is not the contest to talk about it, but just to say that the purpose was really important. But what is about this house, I find the house always a sense of discovery. It's like being at the field. There is a dialogue between the field and the house. The movement of the light and the movement of the light within the architecture is really surprising, and it has these walls made of kind of clay, and and it has a lot of skylights. So there are always a different time of the year, different moments for the light in the movement of the light. And I find that extremely soothing and inspiring for what we do as garden makers. Also, there is a courtyard garden as a porter's house and at the house, and this is a kind of a refuge. Arthur takes care of the garden and takes care of the field. It does more than that. We will talk about that, but the garden is really is always at the center of the space. Everything is around the garden. It's like when you enter, the very first things that you see is the garden. When you move around the space, you always look into the garden. And I think there is a beautiful sense about being a small garden, very secluded. But I found a lot of comfort. I spent 10 months during pandemic in this place, and there was a lot of comfort to be not being able to go out and be in this small courtyard garden. And and the sort of beautiful view from the kitchen window. There is a small basin of water at the center of the space, which is really beautiful to have in terms of movement and reflection. The studio that you see here is the original studio of Maria Antonia. And that's the garden in the summer and a little bit more in the autumn, with the pomegranate trees and the scents. So 2019, I completed the work at the house, and in a romantic idea, I thought it would be really beautiful to have a place to garden. I think there is something about that sometimes you have a vision for something, and my vision was like really that I will live there, I will have a place to garden, and I will have a family. That sort of is almost gone full circle. I think we have all of it, apart from really living there full time. And but the sense of have rooted at the house in the village gave me the comfort also to care for the land, which is away from the house, but is part of our surrounding, is part of Son Servera. And in the search of the land, I asked a lot of people about where I could have a field to grow things. And one local man brought me to this field. He has many pieces of land, but I like this particular field because it had beautiful bones. It had this change of level that the land went away from you. It had a beautiful olivastra at the end, which was like this kind of a point of energy within the space. And it has a beautiful carubo trees on the right-hand side, which you only see a small glimpse of it. Also, what is more striking is the hill, which is at the back of the field, sort of the backdrop to it. The backdrop, I think, is so significant. I discover more and more about the backdrop and why you're brought to a place. First of all, is the place where there is sunrise and sunset, that there is sunrise and moonrise. And I find that, obviously, for somebody who makes gardens, you should know immediately, where the sunrise is. But I think also you do things, or at least I do things like without really knowing why I'm doing it. But I like to do it. I like the field, and I like the trees and the backdrop of the hillside. This hillside is part of Guillem Nadal, which was the artist which I used to visit in the 90s, and up to when I got the house, is one of the hills where he made a sculpture made of 7 hills, which he can see from his house. So it has these hillsides which are all dotted around his landscape. And one of them is this one. And I found that also a beautiful connection with my background about knowing Guya. The other connection is really, there is a great architect that lives on the back of this hillside, very well-known Spanish architect. And he made a a beautiful path. He made 2 paths, one for the sunrise and one for the sunset. And I thought, yeah, also that is really great discovery. And the last discovery is about the man that owns the land. He's a bit of a dreamer, and I suppose somehow there is something that I can connect with him. He's somebody that dreams to have an open air theater which overlooks the hillside. And he knows, because he grew up there, he was born there, he knows where the moon rises, and he knows that at a certain time in the summer, the moon rises at a certain time on the pinnacle of the hill. And he would like his performance to end when the moon rises. And I find these moments of, finding people in the village that tells you a story about something, very precious, about a place where we decide to garden and give our care for the land. So that's the first drawing that I made of the field. This is where the olivastra is. This is where the carrubo is. And I had this idea of making a terrace at the top, mainly for gatherings, like this idea that I had, coming together in the garden, that's what you do. And a series of flower beds, really well-defined, very well-defined flower beds. And this was sort of the first drawing that we made. Second things that I thought is we clear some of the trees. The land was a grazing land for sheep. And I decided maybe it will be really beautiful to frame the trees with a wall. And so this is Manolo. This is March 2020. With Manolo, we sort of decided where the wall will be, and he very passionately built this dry stone wall, which is sort of surrounding the whole field. And the whole idea was to make like the overall landscape or garden. One part within the wall will be like the more sort of cultivated, and the other one outside, the more like meadow-like planting. As we developed, it sort of developed that they are both cultivated, of course. One needs probably less care than the other, or at least we leave less care. But we planted as a Hyperrhenia hirta meadow, if you like, with other accents into it. So this is the very first shape. We done the very first shape of the islands. Arthur was already present here. I think his very first work that he did when he arrived in the summer. He arrived in July, I think, beginning of July 2020. He started to care for the trees around and cleaning the trees. So that's us sort of making the shape of the islands. And that's Manolo, which built the wall with one helper. Very traditional method. So it was beautiful during those times to sort of follow him and sort of see the way he was working. And there's this sort of sinuous line of the walls without plants in, just very clean around these trees. And you can see the well-defined islands here already, where we started and how we started. The only things I can say is from the moment we started this planting, I don't think, there are plants that we left there, like phlomis. There are a group of plants that we left, but I think probably like 60% of the plants were removed, maybe more than that. Mainly for our mine, actually. I can't really include Arthur in this. I thought that things will grow really well in this place. In fact, it's it's not an easy place. We didn't change the condition of the soil. We didn't import, like a lot of people do, import sand or or trying to improve the soil. I think the approach, my approach was, yes, I would like to do a lot of things like that, but also with Arthur, we decided that, especially Arthur was pushing not to touch the fabric of the soil, or if we use soil, they use from the field next door and bring the soil that is local to this field into our piece of land. And so everything grew quite slow. This is the end of the war, so you can see. And the sort of relationship, we left spaces around trees which could create moments sort of like this with shadows and quieter moments. We put references like sort of visual references like with agave ferox, which were grown locally in the south of the island, near Cesalines. There is a South American man that has a really beautiful sort of cacti and succulent nursery, and that's where we went to buy them, and we planted quite a few of them, even outside our field, so that we make the connection with the landscape that is beyond. And this is the surrounding. This is immediately outside our field, and under a sheep, there is still a grazing ground, and that's why we call it the field, because it's a field. There is no home. There is just a pergola for us for gatherings. We put a fence around the field because otherwise, there are very delicious plants to graze, and we made everything. We made the gates, we made a pergola, we pruned the trees and so on, and made these places, this place for gathering like this. So the main planting around the field is made of oaks, pines, olivastra, carrubos, and we, in terms of the planting, the terrace has a very, well, I think is richer now the palette than when we started, but it had a very simple palette. I think the Limonio Insigne with Salvia Piana at the very beginning with some other salvia was sort of making the main planting palette together with echiums, simplex, and plants like that. But I think there are some grasses here, but I think going further, some of the grasses didn't really do well up here as well, and did not come back the next year. Some of the salvia did not come back. The things that did really well was the salvia and the limonio. And the limonio and the salvia actually have done well pretty much everywhere within the field. And the field has a very different soil condition, is on a slope. So at the bottom of the field is very rich, is where if there is rainfall, is where the water is, but also where the grit is brought by the rain. So there is water that sort of crosses the field. So we left a section of the wall open at both sides so that the water can sort of travel through it. And it travels quite a bit. It's not like in little things of water. There is at a certain point, the very first storm that we had there, the wall was full of leaves everywhere, at every level. It wasn't just small things of water. So moment of gatherings was very important. This first moment that we had with Fernando Martos is a Spanish designer that also at the beginning helped us sort of think about the planting palette. Tom Stewart Smith at that point had, I think, 2 or 3 commissions in the islands and was interested to come and see the field. And we had a lot of moments with different people that come to see us, and I think is a beautiful thing to have people to visit. We are now open to the public. I think we only talk with Arthur. I think Arthur see people that want to see it, and absolutely, I think it's a beautiful thing to share it. yeah, but I feel it is really precious to share it with people and to share ideas. Yeah, so this is us here on the terrace, and yeah, everything here felt, this I think was the last summer that we were there, everything started to feel really established. We are on the fourth year going to fifth year, and yeah, I think things start to feel more established now. And one of the things that was very important is if somebody asking me why do you do this, I honestly don't have a straight answer about why I do what I do in terms of this place. I'm feeling really positive when I'm there gardening. I'm feeling very positive when I meet with Arthur, and we garden together. Well, I think we talk a lot together, and I think that is very valuable for me talking to him. I don't know how much is valuable for him talking to me, but is I find that part of having a place like this that is our place, and just to have this idea of layering plants is really layering plants. Every autumn there is another idea, and maybe we look at plant list and we look at what has done well and where there are places that can be improved, and so it's like adding more layers. And I think this is how this place came to be like this. It was a very defined space by character. I come from that background of structure, and I think also with Arthur we had a very beautiful conversation and dialogue here, where Arthur works with self-seeders, likes minute things, likes everything that happens on the ground, and the limonio here was still, this is maybe the year before, 2 years before, the picture that you saw before was much smaller. And a lot of things that happens in spring and also in different time of the years. But this gives you sort of the overall feel about how the wall has become so much part of this garden, of this landscape. And the separation really is where the perennia is, or the more like less cultivated, if you like, areas here. And this is the more, Stipa giganteas, euphobias. We added Gaura, the Salvia africana, there's some Phlomis, and lots of different plants. Sorry, let's come back. Yeah, I say is a dialogue between us. Is really a place that we make together, and I think the experience that I gained from the place is one of not just about plants, but also very, very much about attitude about things, and appreciating things that in a way we can also bring in the project that we do. And I suppose as garden makers, we always look at the big picture. We always look at the things that have really great impact. But it's also beautiful to look at things that are really you really need to find. I think with Arthur, when we are in the space, he doesn't tell me everything that happens, but sometimes I notice something, and he said, "I'm happy that you've seen it," and so everything is not told is also part of our dialogue there, and things that I notice that he has done, things that he seeded, and they're now part of our garden. Yeah. There are plants that really, really striking plants. I mean, I write about. I'm writing about this place. I'm writing about the field and the house, and I find like the plant like the Limonia insignia, the pink coral plant, or the Salvia piana, how much they make the space. Or yeah, I really start planting, and yeah, you can see here the references of the agave ferox that we put. Some of them disappear within the plants. This is a morning um, photographs, and this you can see like you know, how much of the patterns you sort of been created. This I think is 2022 we took this picture, so it was already quite good in spring. We removed, I think we removed a lot of these grasses. A lot of grasses didn't do well, and we removed them. This is the linaria. A lot of plants. What we found is, you know, I think it's a bit like dreamlike when you make gardens. Of course, you know, you have a vision, and you think about, you know, you look at the plant list and you think about the plants you would like to get, and what they will look like in the space. And the reality is a lot of plants are not going to do what you think they're going to do. And finding the place where the plants are going to do something is the real part of what we do. So we're looking at plants are doing really well in certain parts of the ground. This linaria did very well. This, I think, is the first year flowering. It's self-seeded. It never made this again. It's still present around the field. And what is most striking as well is about, you know, plant sourcing, and how there are a lot of growers, of course. You know, there are a lot of growers. There is Oliver Filippi where we buy plants. There is people like Enrica, Culti Delta, Aloma, Carex, nursery in the mainland Spain. There are some people that grow plants, special plants in Majorca, like the Echium, and I think there was a special lavender that we were going to get. And there is people in Italy, you know, husband and wife, that they grow plants. We want to buy plants that are really, you know, some of them are quite normal, or quite common, but some of them are quite special in terms of the variety, and see how they adapt to the field. I think Arthur maybe can tell you in the question and answer session has a real method now about watering, which is water by hands. I think most of it, and it floods the place. Maybe he can tell you more about it, but you know, it takes about a week to water the garden, to water the field during the hot season. So it's flooded and is left, and after we can observe how plants, what happened with the plants and when they will need water next. Yeah, this is early springs. This sort of took a real beautiful sort of patterns through the. You can't almost see the flower beds anymore, and I think this is really really beautiful, I think. And I'm really grateful to be able to have this, have made this place with Arthur in this way, where everything is blends. And one of the things that was really important to us was, you know, this is the Iperenairta meadow, and this is the Iperenairta outside. And the idea was like, you know, there is sort of, when you look through the field, although this is much more ornamental, it doesn't feel that, you know, it's landing from some other places. It feels like that really belongs. There are moments like this, you know, it's like, I think, you know, sometimes with the carrot flowers, we went really crazy, but yeah, beautiful moments in summer, how they can create a display. The verbascum, the self-seeded, that Arthur is encouraged to have in the planting. That's Arthur gardening here, or editing the carrots, maybe. Yeah, and this sort of mist, sort of pixelated array of plants. There is no definition to the space. And I think that's one of the things that, I don't know. I don't think. I mean, I don't think we done it in a way that we wanted to be like. I don't think you can plan for this. But it just came as a feel, as the plant selection, and how the plant felt for us when we were selecting it. What palette we went to choose. And yeah, I think this is later on in the summer. Yeah, I think this is would be nice. There is a series of photographs here, I think 7, 8 photographs, and it's sort of detailed pictures of the plants. And this is, I think, is Arthur. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is one of your favorite plants that is on the ground. And the first time that it was speaking to me about this plant, I couldn't see the point of it. But I find now this, when you see it on it, covering the ground with the stones, yeah, a beautiful texture. And after it turns into this beautiful sort of orange, dry orange textures, from light yellow to more intense yellow into like dry orange when it really gets hot and it burns. Because everything burns, so everything sort of aligns to the climatic condition. Can you hear me, Arthur? Can't do it. It's not here, no?
Sorry. Okay, sorry. No, Artur, you need to unmute yourself. I was also mute. So no, let's see if he comes online. Artur?
Arthur, okay,
Yeah.
no worries.
There he is.
No.
Hello.
Hi, Arthur. No, I was talking about this plant.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were around when we were talking about this, but this sort of these textures on the floor, the way it breaks the ground and the way it goes from flowering to sort of these dry orange dots, and the way sort of everything goes dry at a certain point, so the green sort of disappears. And yeah, how maybe you can tell me about this plant that we have at the field, where it came from.
Hello, everyone. Can you
Hi.
hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Yes. Well, that's I think it's a kind of clover that is just present there. But at the beginning, I used to weed most of everything that wasn't planted by us, as you do. But then quickly I started to and then seeing what was actually growing there in the land. And so I came from England, so I didn't actually have a lot of experience with the local and native wild plants when I started at the field. So it's been about noticing them and letting them be, and not be too quick at pulling everything, and then realizing that there was a lot of things that were actually very beautiful. There was a lot of things that were covering the ground, which I wanted. There was a lot of
This is-
things that attracted a lot of bees, obviously, as our native plants. And also I noticed that everything kind of looked good together. It didn't clash. To me, it doesn't clash with the planting that we did. It was a beautiful addition that made you feel like the garden was kind of on a good way, settling, maturing, and blending in a nicer way. It suddenly didn't make sense for me to weed. So it's a combination, and now I see it as a combination of things that we have added and things that existed there before.
Can you give
Very
us some
good.
of the names? Can you give us some of the names of these? Maybe go back to the for instance, we started here. Do we know? Do we have a name?
Actually, I do have a list that I slowly identified, but the names I honestly don't remember most.
Okay.
No.
This one
I know
is
it's
a
clover.
clove.
I don't
This
know
is a
which one.
verbasco.
Yes, there is also the tiniest belly annual.
Yeah.
That is also one of my favorites in winter. There is Resida alba. That is an addition. There is also Hypericum tomentosum. That is very low, gray leaf, very small thing, but with yellow, the typical Hypericum flowers, full of bees, and it's growing in the canal where the water flows in autumn. And now I've noticed that since I left all this layer of plants in the canal, there is less erosion, obviously. So it's everything's, yes, it's nice. What else?
This is a cistus, no?
I'm not seeing
Sorry.
the
This one here. Sorry. No, this is this one here. This is
yes.
the
Yes.
cistus.
That's another one.
Somebody mentioned on the chat Retama. I don't know. Does that ring a bell? Retama.
Retama is we have it. We have Retama.
Yeah, we have it.
On outside.
It's coming up. It's coming up in the winter section of the picture. This is a cistus after flowering, the orange seeds heads. I think this is a
gladiolus.
Gladiolus
That's
tristis.
gladiolus.
The way it turns after flowering, sort of beautiful, beautiful color of the dry flowers. Ecune simplex. There is a salvia there, or two types of salvias. No, one type of salvia here. Oh, sorry, very sensitive.
Well, perhaps
what is the salvia here, Arthur?
I don't
the one
see
we bought from. It's here. The one we bought from Oliver. I think this one here.
Pomifera.
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 Did very well. This is,
Catanage.
Beautiful. See that Catanage. Yeah. There is a cedar, no?
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. Moricandia. Moricandia arvensis.
Which flowers almost all year.
Yeah, non-stop.
Non-stop. That's you brought it back from somewhere, and you planted this allium.
A beach. Yeah, it's steely.
Yeah.
Well, guys, do you think it would it be possible to ask you to perhaps just do a rapid list? Because I think
sure.
it's difficult with the pronunciation to get the proper the plant names. Without taking too much of your time, but I think we would all be grateful to receive that.
We can circulate the plant list. We have it.
I'll send it to everybody who was here tonight. I'm sure that will come up anyway as a question.
There's Petra Marura pinnata. So at the very beginning, I think we asked Oliver Filippi about 3 plants that he really loved. One was Petra Marula, one was Linaria. that we saw, the orange one, and the other one was Salvia piana. I think that was the 3 plants, and this is a quite incredible plant in terms of, you know, the flowering and the statue that it has within the space, and the way it stays, and the sort of long-lasting structure that it sort of leaves.
So that one, which one is that? Sorry.
That is Petra Marula pinnata.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that you see, that is the retama, white flowering retama that we put within the meadow. Within the meadow also there are celled cedars, you know, that are sort of, this is yellow flowering spontaneous plants that sort of comes from outside the field or from is already present there. But, you know, it's basically an Iperanea hirta sort of area, you know, with, now we planted lavanda dentata within this meadow. And what is the grass around the carubo trees here?
That's Piptaterum. Piptaterum mildaceo.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Beautiful.
That is outside the field. So outside the field is like this dry land with euphorbia, which I think also comes into our field. Sort of, yeah, late spring, early summer, I imagine. The idea, you know, like, you know, I think this is one of the fields that we really love in terms of, you know, so this, we plant a lot of euphorbias this autumn to create more patterns with them. Yeah, you can see the sort of, yeah, the Iperanea hirta sort of, the density of it within this against the wall. Yeah, at a certain point we cut it down. So we cut it down at the very end of February, I think.
Between January and February, yes.
In January, we take it down, and it's a totally different things. And after that, there are more like early spring plants sort of arising from that. There is the hillside. And also one of the things that Arthur has been doing on the outskirts of the field is caring for the trees and caring for how the views are. And I think it's so important about these things, about the love of the land and the way we don't just take care of the cultivated area, but also of the surrounding, you know, revealing the walls and another opportunity is to plant within this area. Yeah, this is sort of underneath this olivastra and the pines, there is all of these pistachios and the Ampelodesmus, you know, and different, or Tipa gigantea within the boundaries of the field and the woodland. I think it's a sort of beautiful to care for all of the spaces, and that gives you like a winter feel of the earlier on. This is probably 2021, 2022, I can't remember. That gives you a feel about the wall and the graphic quality of it. The way that the Muhlenberger sort of makes the space at that time of the year. There's a view back towards the sitting area at the very top. Yeah, and this is probably this time of the year, I would say. Late November. Sort of this chromatic quality of the grasses with the sort of the different greens of the salvia, the phlomis. Yeah, we planted a lot of this Muhlenberger. In fact, I don't know how many we removed from the field, but I think a lot. I think we did it probably the other way around. We planted far too many, and after realize how well established it is and how and what size it can becomes. Everything in the field, you know, everything that you see. If you see a plant on a photograph of a nursery, and after you plant it here, is never gonna make that size. Yeah, we maybe plant more, but this plant was like made it fairly quickly, and with no time was dominating the space, and soon after we removed, yeah, maybe 3/4 of that. Yeah, sort of these textures, and this is sort of point of really beautiful point, I think, for sort of finding this form within sort of very dry and a place where establishing plants is it takes time. It's a beautiful moment to sort of get the plants so having such a body, having such a presence. This is what happened in the landscape, in the surrounding landscape as Fidelius in the winter. In our field, we have the flowering trees in the winter, and at this time of the year, I think probably this is late January, we still have the Iperanyairta quality. There is Arthur's shed where we keep the tools, and that's Arthur, and I'm really grateful to him for all the work he does and extraordinary sensitivity, observing all of the plants, and yeah, and spending his time there. We made a video which I'm going to play, and we're going to end with that. Okay. Sorry, I thought there was another video playing, but it's not. So yeah, so thank you very much for your time and for inviting us to tell us about this.
Thank you. I mean,
story.
I think it's absolutely amazing to see the transition from those very, very structured first gardens that we glimpsed at the beginning of your presentation when you were talking about your your background and where your development and so on, and this lovely, just crazy, wild place that you are now looking after together. So if I can ask you now to unshare Luciano, and then we'll go into gallery view so that people can, there were a lot of questions that were coming up as we were going through. So if you unshare your presentation now, please.
Yeah, I stop share.
There we go. Then we all come back into a group. And Willem-Jan Kuiper, who's one of the members from Italy, he's going to read out some of those questions quickly. So if you would like to do that, Willem-Jan.
Yep, sure.
Okay.
We got a top scorer, that's Kirsten Honeyman from all the way from California. But I'm going to cluster the questions a little bit, but I'm going to start with two of hers. And that's if the photos were of your hand, Luciano. And second question of her is, if you made up the planting scheme of your garden with the threat of fires in mind.
Threats of fire.
Fire,
The threat of fires.
Yeah, the bushfires. Yeah.
I can honestly say no. I have no well, there is no intention about the bushfires threat for us. I think, like as I said, we sort of started a plant palette. You know, I mean, Arthur, as we felt, you know, has been a development, has been adding sort of things that we really love, made it up as we went along, looking at plants together, things that really exciting us, and also the work that Arthur was explaining about, you know, encouraging things with seeds, self-seeders, sort of pairing the planted and the work that Arthur does at the field. It's also beautiful to try different plant combination. You know, it's like sometimes you dream about plant combination and it, you know, what can we have? It would be really beautiful to have this, you know, let's buy 100 of them. Yeah. And, and after, this doesn't happen that way. There's only very little display that sort of comes from there. So I think the planting list has been, we started with a grass-based planting list. I think, you know, if I didn't show you a picture because the evolution has been too dramatic, but, you know, we started with this grass-based plants, and after has evolved into more like shrubs that sort of hold the space, and into more like plants that we really loved, you know, like we started to look also at plants that really are drought tolerant, but really drought tolerant, you know. Zone 4 wasn't enough at a certain point, zone 5 wasn't enough, and so we're just looking at plants zone 6, you know, what grows in zone 6, and who grows those plants, and, you know, in zone 6, and we saw that the field is, you know, at the very beginning when we were starting, the soil felt very hard to make a hole. You know, it was difficult to make a hole within the soil, and we spoke to different people. We went to see different people, and we started to sort of create a little bit more mounds as well to give more space for the plants from the soil from next door, bringing it in and sort of creating more like mounds into the space to sort of help the plants to establish.
Clear. Luciano, I've got also a couple of questions relating to the planting design. One is also of Kirsten Honeyman, if you have used lavender. The second one is of Emma Bannister, and she asks you if you have considered the use of vertical elements, for example, G-presses. And the question of Harry Langton, when you design groups, how many plants do you use in your groups?
I like big numbers. I mean, that's for sure. I like to buy big numbers of plants. I'm no one that likes to try like 20, but I think I'm sort of put a break by Arthur to say, you know, let's try 20 of this. And I think, but I like the idea of trying different groups in different parts of the field and see where they adapt. And it's what we've been doing, I think. In terms of trees and cypresses, no, we introduced the only tree we introduced. We planted the olivastra at the top of the field where we're sitting close to that, and after the ginesta, no, Arthur, into the sorry, the retama in the Iperenia Irta meadow. We haven't planted. All the trees are existing, and I think, I mean, we have suppressors at home. The weather, they look great. but we don't plan to plant. I think we don't plan to plant more trees, at least within our field. Maybe outside, if we could, we will plant it. If the owner gives us more space to plant.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. And lavender, did you use that?
Yeah.
We only just planted last year a little bit, and this autumn we've been planting a little bit more of lavanda dentata. Yes, but until now there was like a bit of an statement not to have it, but very questionable, I know. But yeah, I don't know why.
We got it. We got it now. Is doing very well.
Finally, very with us. Yes.
A question of Yvonne Barton is if you could tell us a little bit about the maintenance, how much pruning is being done, what's the average maintenance yearly?
The maintenance is that I'm pretty much there every day of the week. I combine this with also the courtyard that Luciano showed you in his house. But yeah, which is very lucky. And I know it's not the very common thing that a gardener is in a garden working there permanently for so long, so I can take the time to do everything in the rhythm that I want to. So the pruning, I don't do a massive prune at one time of the year. I do soft prunings around the year, every time of the year, more or less. The grasses are a different thing. And the shrubs, I don't know. I don't do very big prunings. It's just like a matter of keeping the height and just cutting off the tips. So as for pruning is basically cutting the grasses once a year, and very little. And yes, I try to keep up everything as long as possible. And because here in Mallorca, the dry season, or like the dead season, if you like, is combined between summer and winter. There is finishing things in the summer, and then there is also finishing things in the winter. So there's all year round, there's little things to prune every now and then, and very slowly.
I have myself one question about your design principles. And you showed us some of your inspiration, the dancing trees, the ceramics of the former owner, but also the very beautiful, moody black and white photograph of the garden. It all has a soberness, a strictness, a sereneness about it, which I also see back in the design of your garden. How do you maintain that sereneness? Because I see with a lot of gardeners, also myself, we have a tendency of filling up things, and I really love your soberness. How do you work consciously on that, applying that to your garden design?
I think we have an intention with what we trying to do. I think in the early days, in the 90s, especially early 2000, there were these really green gardens. So that was a different thing. There was no space for anything in there. There you couldn't add anything. But nowadays, I think there is something that you can have an intention, and obviously has structural plants, trees, and certain form shrubs. But everything else, the best possible scenario will be like happened in the garden we finished in Tuscany last year, and the areas that we planted, they were sort of broken by other plants on the ground that were planted also, partly by us, but also not maintained. Yeah, left it to run, to sort of be free. And I think it's really beautiful. And it was the attitude like Arthur has of the gardener to have that feel. And you're grateful for sort of that sense of that somebody has such a sense of for the space. And I don't expect things to be so in order nowadays. I'm quite in a different place than where I was. And I think, you know, I described to Angela in our talk before doing this talk that, you know, we have different personalities, and, you know, we have one that sort of is us and is predominant, which is, you know, I like things to be ordered, but also I have another part of me which I like really things to be quite chaotic. So I think it's a sort of combination of personalities, and it's great. The place is made by gardeners, so regardless, you know, of what we trying to, gardeners make the difference, and so I think is their input that really makes that order or more chaotic.
All right, thank you. Angela, is that time for more questions?
I think yeah, there were just a couple more down on the chat that have come in since we've been answering. I'm happy to keep going.
Yeah, well, I read a lot of compliments, so I will pass that through. Two questions I saw, if you could tell us a little bit about the soil maintenance and if you use irrigation or not.
Arthur.
Yes. Soil. As Luciano said, we didn't alter the soil a lot. We didn't excavate also, as a lot of, I think it's done quite a lot as well, like a deep excavation to loosen the soil. We didn't do that. We only, I think we plowed very lightly at the beginning. We added a tiny bit of compost because we weren't sure at that moment if things would be okay without. And then on the second phase, we added soil on top to see, because at that moment we figured that the soil was very hard and very compact. So plants grow very slow, and we wanted to try if with much more looser soil on top would be okay. And I think it did prove good, but it's something that I don't like to do so much, to mix the soil, to touch much of it, because there's a lot of moss, there's a lot of layers, and there's a lot of, I don't know. Anyway.
May I interrupt or ask you more question about, it was the question from me. Was any specific reason that you didn't want to touch the structure of the soil to not perturb the ecosystem?
Mm-hmm.
But does for a specific client project, you would do the same approach, or you would add soil and really mix and prepare? And because in that case, I can see it's a private garden owned by gardeners. So let's say the approach on results is very different as a research.
Of course.
Or I think more as a research experience. But for a client, would you do the same?
If I could, I won't. But the situation is that most sites where we're gonna be working as a studio isn't just a garden, meaning that is a development where, you know, there's a lot of things happening away from, you know, is actually more protecting what is there is the very first things to do. But the fabric of the soil is become really difficult to protect because they're going everywhere. And I think, you know, that's one of the things that is so precious at the field, that, you know, we garden in a place where there was no need of that. There was no development. Yeah, different people have different approach, you know, different people work with sand, different people work, you know, I think, you know, we added a little bit of soil. We took soil from the next field to bring in, but it was a local soil. It was the soil next to us. I think that we did quite a bit to sort of encourage the plants.
So, and what is it?
The soil. What is it after the soil?
Lime is a little. There's got a little bit of clay, but not as clayish as some parts of Mallorca are very, very clay. This one isn't as clay, and it's very rocky. And there's like a natural gravel layer with all sort of size of stone, from big like this to like a very small. It's which is very nice, but it's very hard.
And quite free draining?
I guess it is, but I think it's quite compact as well.
Oh.
Thank you.
Compact.
And sorry, and in terms, if I answer the question about the irrigation, in the islands, we put irrigation system at the beginning. We were advised to, and we did. Now probably we wouldn't have put, because me being able to be there every day, as Luciano said, I can take a week just watering by hand because I can. But yes, I don't use this system anymore, or very, very little. And we water once a month for the new plants that because every year we add new plants. Every year there's like little plants that need some welcoming, and so I do water every month quite deeply. Luciano said I flood the place. It's not like that so much, but I do keep the hose like running and have the holes in each plant, and I try. I don't see how deep it goes, but I try to go as deep as I can. And if I was using there was a transition moment when I sometimes used the irrigation system, but then I used it in a different way that it's usually used, which is also I leave it on for many hours, almost 24 hours. I keep doing so I can use the irrigation like that, but still doing it only once a month, but really deep, not a few minutes or half an hour maximum every day, but like a good watering, and then I forget about it. I think that's quite important. But
so you're talking about drip. It's drip. It's under.
Yes.
Drip. And you've got a well? Have you got a well? Where's the water coming from?
It is, yes, not within the walls or within the garden, but very local in the same field. There is actually a big well, and it supplies the whole town of Son Servera, so we get it directly from there. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Shall we finish? Shall we finish with the? I think it's now 7:30. So, if anybody would like to speak directly to Luciano, please just pipe up. Otherwise, maybe we say thank you and thank you for being with us. I will follow up with you about the plant list.
Thank you.
Because I just think that would be so valuable to us to just have those plants written down. The images were stunning. I think it's a very, very unique and suggestive and inspiring place. I'm sure Emma would like to bring some of our Majorca members there. So I hope
Emma.
Emma is here on the screen. If you say hi.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think they would love to come.
George
Brumda is hi George, good evening or good morning for you. Unmute yourself.
Hello everybody. I just had a very simple question. This has been a fantastic presentation. I've really loved every minute of it. I've been smiling the whole time. I think that you're doing just amazing things with nature, and it's fabulous. So my question, are you involved in other gardens?
I'm involved in other gardens. Yeah, I'm involved in a lot of other gardens.
You are? Okay.
Yeah, I'm involved in a lot of other gardens. Not quite like this. This is very personal, George. and that's why it's so special, you know. But yeah, we work. We work from our studio is in London, and we work Italy quite a bit, and Europe, also America.
Where in America have you been?
I've been a lot of places over the last almost 30 years, but I've been the last garden we finished was in Virginia. So we worked there 2018, yeah, to 2023.
So you work in a range of climates, I gather.
Exactly, range of climates, and like in a situation like Virginia, I was really eager always to work with Roy Diblick and bring it to work with our studio. Roy, I don't know if you know anything about Roy, but Roy is a great plantsman based in Chicago. And yeah, knows a lot of growers, knows a lot of things about plants, and yeah, so has been helping us there, but not just with the planting. I think the most important things when you work away from home is, and quite away from home, is to who can establish a dialogue with the gardeners, who can inspire the gardener, and who is their reference there, more in contact with them. I think that's what we think about when we think about really working away from home, that the sort of people that can help with that and be with the gardeners and sort of motivate them.
I do think it's a thread that I see in all of your love of collaboration and teams and being with other people and cross-fertilizing with other people, and I mean, obviously, any designer delivering a garden that doesn't take account of gardeners is in trouble. So that's very, very, very admirable. Very admirable.
No, that's great communities.
I guess you've got lots of cooking to be done when these people come to Italy, or where you go there. There's always going to be a large gathering. Luciano, è stato un piacere totale. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for being with us this evening. We have one more session in the year, just in about 2 weeks' time, because this is obviously slightly late for November. But I hope to see you all again. And thank you, Artur, as well.
Thank you all.
And thank you, Willem Jan, for a very good question answering. Okay. Good night, everybody. Good morning if it's morning for you. Bye.
Bye.
See you soon. Thank you.